Thank you all for coming out. I'm actually going to read a little bit from my last book, Aesthetics Lesson, and then I'm going to read some poems from the manuscript in progress. So you actually won't have to go out and buy any metal. You'll get to hear some of it here on the spot. So anyway, yes, thank you all for coming, and thank you for having me here. This is a real pleasure. Anyway, this is the title poem from my last book, Aesthetics Lesson. There is a kind of beauty in the barren cheekbones of rock. There is a kind of beauty in fingers of trees pushed into the ground. There is a kind of beauty in the play of animals before they kill. There is a kind of beauty in the woman sleeping beside me. Though I want my kiss to be her awakening, I will not, for there are 2 inches of nothing between us, as I am as much a monastery as she is a nunnery, for our union would be a merger of the wrong kinds of beauty. The second one I'm going to read for you is called Ode to Joy. I suppose some of you will probably recognize I did not come up with that title. I stole it from the German poet Friedrich Schiller. Now, the reason that poem is at all famous is because one of his friends, Ludwig van Beethoven, set it to music. It is the Ninth Symphony, probably the greatest piece of music ever written. I suspect that will not happen with this poem. Ode to Joy. Half-hearted hedonist, I spend much of my time in search of a joyous occasion, such as the sound of ice swirled at the bottom of a crystal tumbler, my hand as I unzip the back of my love's best silk gown, the 8-ball in the corner pocket after a come-from-behind 4-ball run, writing a book widely considered unfilmable, the sound of my cat's paws as they pad across the tiles, growing old unafraid, having no sycophants or protégés, a fierce Sundine backhand from the bottom of the circle, a lick of the knife in picking my teeth after a fine meal, crowd surfing as Slayer launches into Angel of Death, 2 shimmering lines of cocaine on New Year's Eve, which I probably bought from the mayor. Except he's not that classy. Oh, that'd be my mayor, not your mayor. Don't call the police. Writing something moderately better than the worst of John Donne. A delightful ache in the arms after a long day of work in the blistering August sun. The history of Chinese dynasties. The hope that my last name will someday form an adjective. I'm kind of thinking Doda-esque. You can start using that one. A show of mercy to the vanquished. Kilar's Orawa at maximum volume in the early hours of the morning. The still air after the first great snowfall. Yet I would consider giving up much of these and more for a little piece of faith, to find a reason for Aurora Borealis, a plan in the spider's web, to stop weeping like the Buddha over Time magazine, to stop downing Paxil with bourbon, to stop answering fine when nobody means it, to receive the blessing in the scorpion's sting, the beautiful, dutiful orgasm that drives us on, to sleep well at night and wake before dawn, to throw out divinity and still know a basis for the sacred. Thank you. In keeping with the garbage theme, actually, you know what? I think I may have written this poem after I was talking to Priscilla's uncle, or when I was thinking about him anyway. We in North America, a millennia or two from now, when our countries are long gone into the dust bins of history, the way, the ancient Egyptians and Kazakh or various other peoples have gone. We don't have tombs to dig up. So when archaeologists from whoever's going to be way off in the future want to find out about us, it occurred to me that the only thing they're going to be able to dig up is our landfill. They're going to be our garbage dumps. So I started this thing, it's called archaeology. Our past is up, and men will journey from foreign lands with tools and theories to pry our dusty tombs. When these yield but bone and simple trinkets, older, more legendary maps, surveys they're called, will be unrolled. 1 million crucifixes and video game consoles becoming fossils. They'll scavenge garbage like tabloid reporters or malicious ex-wives. Khrushchev said, "We will bury you," and banged his shoe. In the end, we too will greet our Waterloo with click remote control and go under, dreaming our bulk in the ground. So I'm going to move on to doing some of the glosas. Now the first one is actually decidedly very non-metal because it's actually, I use 4, I'll do the quick thing first. A glosa, to put it very quickly, is a form of poetry that's not used very often anymore. It comes from the old Spanish court system. And what you basically do is you take 4 lines from another poet that are consecutive from a poem, and you write a 40-line poem of your own. It's 4 stanzas, 10 lines apiece, and the last line of each stanza are the 4 lines that you've pilfered from somebody else. And within each stanza, there's a rhyme scheme that has to be followed as well. So my variation on this, the form was kind of popularized in Canada by P.K. Page, who did 2 books of them, is that I've lifted all of my source texts from hard rock and heavy metal lyrics. Now the first one is actually probably the lightest band, easily the lightest band I use, is the Rolling Stones. And I wrote this actually in a somewhat cynical reasoning that when I was putting together grant applications, I wanted to make sure there was at least one band in it that everyone had heard of. And I initially didn't even intend to put this one in the book, but then I wrote it and I liked it. But anyway, so the 4 lines are from Rocks Off, which is the opening track on Exile on Main Street. When the lines are, "Your mouth don't move, but I can hear you speak. What's the matter with the boy? He don't come around no more. Is he checking out for sure?" Now this poem is called Death Threat. And for those of you who have received a death threat, you'll know how it clarifies certain things in your mind. Helps you prioritize. At some point, the addressed message arrives. Then there's a lot more past than future in any given life. 35, an astonishing fulcrum, a downward slide to a place you'd rather not fathom. You start to be meek, start to see portents in the obvious you fail to recognize. Your limbs look strong, but I know you're weak. Your mouth don't move, but I can hear you speak. You begin to measure that first gray hair, first twinge in the knees, the first time you pause on the landing, forgetting why you're there, that last dance you dread. And when an ex-lover threatens to destroy, by note in a mailbox, everything you've built, you measure life in kids you never had, an insane ploy. What's the matter with the boy? Ask yourself if the question contained an answer you could confront in a realistic way. I see that possible he in my tattered mirror face, that pre-future me that never knew to think about the first time he wore out his welcome or his leather jacket in a dead town where the police were happy to show him the door. He don't come around no more. In his place is a man I've come to know well, all too well. I shave his face and brush his teeth and wash his hair and think less of him with each passing day and scoff at the first time I thought of him as someone I could cure of time. The first time I thought of him as someone without a first time to have ever again. I knew he could be pure. Is he checking out for sure? Okay. Because this is Canada, I have to have CanCon. Otherwise, I think some government agency comes and bothers me. So I've lifted 4 lines from A Farewell to Kings by Rush for this. Scheming demons dressed in kingly guise, beating down the multitude and scoffing at the wise. This is called a casual undertaking. The day the crows came for me, they filled the weeping willow outside my door with corvine chatter and patience on the threshold. I did not know of them until they stood, darkened omens between me and the clouds, sharpened minions of shimmering flight. They shone with the gravitas of religions. Scheming demons spoke on branches, beaks hidden under conspiracy wings. Look, it is him, the one we have come for, the us we are missing. I've always had a mind of many accidents, and it broke my skeleton hollow to fly. My eyes slanted sideways, shoulders grew into a portable doom that would wither any chance at compromise. Dressed in kingly guise, my cloak of ebony feathers, I walked for the last time, because there the dream of unknown power did raise me up. They took my watch, said I was ready to exclude the little earth, break away from footsteps of dust and days, take my place atop the rood, beating down the multitude, and forget the last time a common funeral would go on without me. When the timeless crows circle, halo of shadow, dark ring lowered, slowly, a hung noose, dread tourniquet, gliding down clockwise from the belly of heaven, promised a neck and waiting for the ground to fall or the sky to rise, and scoffing at the wise. I grew up sort of in between Brampton and Orangeville, sort of in the Caledon foothills area. And when I was a teenager, before the police kind of decided we shouldn't do this anymore, we used to have these enormous field parties that would last for 3-4 days on end. So this poem is just called Caledon Field Party, 1987. And I'd taken 4 lines from the San Francisco metal band Exodus, from their song Architect of Pain. Nature inspires our tastes bizarre. She paints them only as they are. From the darkest corners of the mind is real, as the morning sun shall rise just the same. The last time we saw Wayne, he wasn't looking too good. But a dozen beer, a Mickey of Southern Comfort, and 4 double-barreled purples will do that to a guy. But he was talking like a starved shaman before the crash. His mind ajar, he was living in the twitch. Nature, with a sweep of his hand, is our first and foremost passion, our psychic radar. Nature inspires our tastes bizarre. She is our alpha, but not our omega. She wants to be wanted, to be our endless fountain, our cunning jest, our place of sincerity. Nature is an experience that straddles the difference between fantasy and memory. She is far more an ontology than a place. She is the word stretched upon our wheel. She licks the scab over the scar. She paints them only as they are. Yet she must be denied for the real work to begin. Our realm in the world depends on our making of the word. We are pawn seeking to be king. Under bright skies or moon, he went on like this for 3 days. An unending spiel that sounded wise when we were high, clinically high, searching for a space outside of life that would reveal from the darkest corners of the mind as real a future none of us would have out of those teenage years that keep so long a hold on us. We have failed to live up to our promise, but are everything that was expected. Wayne was already gone, lost in the tempting void, left us lying without claim to our thoughts. Nothing was ours. We wrecked. We barely noticed the passing of our friend wandering in the forest, hunting for his name, as the morning sun shall rise just the same. I'll give you one more of these. This is called Atheist's Grace, and it's taken from the New York band Overkill. And the 4 lines are fairly simple, actually. The trick with this one was getting all the rhyme scheme to work, because it's just, today was then, remember when, skipping numbers 1 through 10, permanence through the pen. I'm actually happy to say that this poem is going to appear in a journal in Ireland very shortly. It's one of my first foreign publications, so I'm sort of pleased about. Anyway. Atheist Grace. Let my life be my obituary. Never let it be said that I died peacefully after a courageous battle with an unstoppable disease. Rather that I lived like the spark from an arc welder's torch, like a grammarian's well-placed hyphen. Please, hold a minute of noise in my honor. Say I was content when it was over, for my death is no serf, it shall have dominion. Today was then. Let my life be my eulogy. Recall that I did not pretend to be more than my details. St. Christopher was born in the deformed year of 1971, a metal pig, according to the Chinese. He served many masters, bore his kind of burden before he found his art. Recall a time I laughed at death, for my death is not definite. It is an effect for the stricken. Remember when. Let my life be my elegy. If you would, speak that I behaved like there was always one more labor to complete, that I allowed myself an arrogance that I could not retire. I was good enough to stop the world and let it hang for one crystal moment, the hidden way opened to me just once, that my death was not a product, it was a method to sidestep the countdown to the final curtain, skipping numbers 1 through 10. Let my life be my epitaph. Set down that I took my stab at the tread of the gods and failed better than most. I was marred and served the scars faithfully. I let no Christ be my guide, allowed no Buddha to direct my thoughts or hunger, was never bidden by Muhammad to raise a mailed fist, though my death is no long sleep. It is a campaign of an objective blasted against shaken Zen, permanence through the pen. And I'm going to finish up with actually the last poem in the book. This is about Noah. This is called Consider This. When Noah and company first set sail, there were no weavers or tanners on board, nor any engineers, bankers, stewards, stock jobbers, terrorists, or kingsmen, hunters and gatherers, which is probably a wise choice, butchers or bakers, or indeed candlestick makers, no folk dancers, muckrakers, or Los Angeles Lakers, no sages or ad execs, boot-black slave drivers, bagmen, hitmen, movers and shakers, no undertakers, professors of anything, bureaucrats, doctors, technicians, restaurateurs or logicians, dentists or magicians, no plumbers, pilots or tailors, no dealers, no cooks, and strangely, no sailors. Also absent were plant managers, masseuses, motivational speakers, record producers, Svengalis, lovers, seducers, nurses, geishas, medusas, no priests, no prisoners, and no gentlemen of leisure, no psychiatrists, popes, or librarians, podiatrists, Tories, Whigs, or libertarians, no teachers, strippers, sales reps, jewelers, glassblowers, or referees, no sultans, no beefeaters, and no one to run the hospitality suite. And there weren't no feckin' poets on there neither. Or so my great-grandfather tells me.